Hello, welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che for this 6 p.m. edition of Arirang News. Let's start with the headlines. For the first time since President Park Geun-hye took office, a Korea-Japan summit is set. The two will focus on sensitive issues, including some related to the history between the two countries. According to a World Bank report, Korea has beaten China and Japan to be ranked the fourth easiest country in the world to do business in. Despite an angry reaction from Beijing, Washington expresses its determination to carry out naval operations near the artificial islands built by China in the disputed Spratly Islands chain. President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will hold their first summit on the sidelines of a trilateral meeting with China in Seoul. But will it be enough to break the ice between the two leaders? Few think so. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
For the first time since taking office, President Park will hold summit talks with their Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe. The two leaders will meet next Monday in Seoul to discuss a range of sensitive issues.
The two leaders are expected to exchange in-depth opinions about pending bilateral issues, including the issue of the comfort woman.
More than 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese military during World War II. Korea wants a sincere apology and compensation for the aging victims, although Japan claims that this was settled through a 1965 treaty and a private fund. The issue has kept the two leaders wide apart for more than 2.5 years. But there is little hope for any progress in their bilateral ties, with the two leaders not even taking the time to dine together.
There are no plans to hold a luncheon. This has been settled through discussions between Korea and Japan.
Some say the summit will be no more than just a token meeting on the sidelines of a meeting with China. Despite few expecting real gains from the summit between President Park and Prime Minister Abe, it comes as Seoul hosts the first trilateral summit in more than 3 years with Beijing and Tokyo on Sunday. And from this, the three leaders will adopt a joint statement outlining their commitment to bolster three-way cooperation, although relations with Japan may remain somewhat strained. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The controversy surrounding the government's decision to only allow a single state-authorized history textbook for middle and high school students from 2017 doesn't look poised to abate anytime soon, with Korea's rival parties ratcheting up their tone. The ruling Saenuri Party continues to call on the opposition bloc to cooperate in parliamentary duties that enable the swift passage of bills related to 4 major reforms, including labor reforms. But while the Education Ministry is scheduled to officially confirm the direction of the textbook in a week, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is preoccupied with shoring up public support to halt the government's move. The Liberal Party is also contemplating filing a constitutional complaint and plans opposing the plan until next April's general elections. The ruling Saenuri Party is seeking to ratify the KoreaChina FTA before the year is up, but the New Politics Alliance for Democracy is lukewarm about the bilateral pact. Kim Young-gil has the latest on the back and forth between the rival parties.
The ruling Saenuri Party said Wednesday damages arising from the failure to implement tariff reductions could surpass $5 billion annually if ratification of the Korea-China FTA is delayed. Such a prospect is behind the ruling bloc urging the opposition's cooperation in gaining parliamentary approval for the FTA.
The ruling party and the government reconfirmed that ratifying the Korea-China FTA is a must to boost the nation's sagging exports and to revitalise our economy.
Kim, the ruling party's chief policymaker, hopes the upcoming meeting with the opposition bloc and government will provide headway in the legislature approving the accord. Korea's Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jae has reaffirmed that with China as Korea's largest trade partner, ratifying the trade deal will benefit Korea.
The parliament approves the Korea-China FTA within this year, then tariffs will be removed starting next year, bringing advantage for Korean firms to export their products.
Minister Yoon said countries like Vietnam and New Zealand that signed similar agreements with Korea are closely watching for Seoul's approval. However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy says they will weigh the FTA's pros and cons at the parliamentary committee level.
The Korea-China FTA must be dealt with thoroughly within the relative parliamentary committees for our national interests.
The MPAD is demanding the government first introduce measures to support potentially vulnerable industries, despite the government already earmarking nearly $800 million in subsidies for such sectors as agriculture and fisheries. Seoul and Beijing approved the trade deal last November and sealed it at a signing ceremony in June. Kim Young-gyun, Arirang News.
The World Bank says South Korea is one of the easiest countries in the world to do business in. In fact, topping the list are Singapore, New Zealand, and Denmark, and South Korea is ahead of regional rivals like China and Japan. Oh Soo-young has the details.
Korea is the fourth easiest country to do business in, according to a World Bank report published Wednesday. Asia's fourth largest economy has been on a steady rise in rankings these past 6 years, achieving an immense leap from 19th in 2009. Singapore maintained its first place for a 10th straight year, followed by New Zealand and Denmark. Meanwhile, Japan tumbled from 29th to 34th, while China rose 6 notches to 84th. The annual Doing Business report ranks 189 countries based on 10 indicators, including obtaining license approvals, starting a business, and the ease of cross-border trading. In terms of G20 countries, Korea ranks first, while among OECD countries it ranks third behind New Zealand and Denmark. Korea's finance ministry attributes the upward trend to consistent government efforts to create a business-friendly environment with improved business rules and infrastructure. However, experts say the World Bank report may not reflect true business conditions as its evaluation standards are too general, overlooking certain restrictions.
There are a number of indirect barriers on labour, work sites and environmental conditions through market restrictions, pricing regulations and government controls. These create difficulties for businesses.
To address these shortcomings, the Finance Ministry says it will continue to improve rules on labour, work sites and the environment. It will also mitigate regulations on service and new technology industries. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Improving the local business climate and structural reforms may be vital, says Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol, due to the looming uncertainties stemming from the world's two largest economies. Kim Ji-yeon has the full story.
Uncertainty is a keyword that best describes recent conditions in the global economy. This is according to Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol at a monthly meeting with local economic experts on Wednesday, citing a potential U.S. rate hike and the slowdown of the Chinese economy. The BOK governor says the central bank is closely monitoring the Federal Open Market Committee this week, since a rate hike could have a negative impact on Korea's financial markets, such as a capital flight to emerging markets. He says mixed indicators about how well the U.S. economy is doing are making it more difficult to predict whether the Fed will start raising its key rate this or next year. He added, however, that the impact from a U.S. rate hike on the Korean economy as a whole will be limited due to the country's strong fundamentals, including its current account surplus and high level of foreign currency reserves. Yet the BOK governor didn't offer the same optimism regarding uncertainties arising from a slowdown in China, Korea's largest trading partner. Already, Korea's exports to China has dipped throughout the first 9 months of this year. To curtail negative effects, the BOK governor emphasized the importance of structural reforms of the local economy, including the government's deregulatory drive in the service sector, as well as altering the current local exporting pattern to China, from exporting processed materials and components to finished products. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's leading shipbuilders continue to bleed, with industry analysts predicting the top 3 shipbuilders recording tremendous losses this year. The key driving factor, delays in offshore plant business. Shin Se-min takes a closer look.
Reeling from a decline in international expansion coupled with a slump in demand for new vessels, Korea's top 3 shipbuilders are drastically losing more money. Industry data shows the top 3 shipbuilders, Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, Hyundai and Samsung Heavy Industries are expected to post a combined loss of over 8 trillion won, roughly $7 billion this year. This is said to be the first time all three have individually bled annual operating losses of over 1 trillion won, roughly $0.8 billion. Already, Daewoo Shipbuilding, the country's second-largest shipbuilder, logged an operating loss of over 3.7 billion in the first 9 months this year, resulting from increased costs arising from the delayed construction of low-priced ships and offshore facilities. Hyundai Heavy Industry, Korea's leading shipbuilder, isn't an exception, as it already suffered a 2.8 billion loss last year. Blaming the loss on dropping oil prices, Hyundai logged 3 quarterly losses this year, a continuation of 8 straight quarterly operating losses since late 2013. A shift in strategy to focus on deep-sea drilling rigs and production facilities is considered the major reason behind the continued deficits facing Korea's largest shipbuilders. Industry watchers say the delay in offshore rig projects also played a role, saying that once deliveries are made, the shipbuilders' profits will see a rebound. However, although it is difficult to predict when the companies will return to profit, watchers say the trend will likely continue at least until the end of this year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The first legal hearing related to the ongoing family feud at the top of Korea's fifth largest conglomerate, Lotte Group, began this morning in Seoul. The group's elderly founder, Shin Gyuk-ho, and his oldest son, Shin Dong-ju, are seeking an injunction against Lotte Shopping in order to read the company's accounting records, which is translated as an effort to emphasize the current chairman's business failures in China. This is the first hearing for one of the 3 lawsuits filed by Shin Dong-ju against his younger brother, Dong-bin. None of the family members are at court today. In Korea, the elder brother, Dong-ju, filed a lawsuit against the management of Lotte Hotel and Lotte Hotel Busan earlier this month after being sacked from his executive position. He also filed a lawsuit in a Japanese court to nullify the dismissal of his father as chairman of Lotte Group. Further trial dates have not been set yet. The South Korean Red Cross and the Unification Ministry are to conduct psychological well-being checkups on South Korean families who participated in the recent reunions for war-separated families with North Korea. Officials say counselors and volunteer workers will meet the 643 participants in coming days and weeks, but did not elaborate on the exact timing. Those needing extra psychological care will be introduced to appropriate health care facilities. Similar checkups were conducted following the February 2014 reunions, but back then none of the participants required any serious aftercare. With reunions between families separated by the Korean War successfully ending earlier this week, South and North Korean labor union workers are meeting this week to play a friendly game of soccer. This will be their first encounter in 8 years, raising hopes that civic exchanges between the two Koreas may increase. Hwang Sung-hee brings us this report.
Members of South Korea's 2 major labor unions departed to Pyongyang Wednesday for friendly soccer matches with their North Korean counterparts. This is the first series of matches in 8 years and the third in total. With 2 teams from each side of the border, matches will be held over 2 days. With 162 members, the South Korean delegation is the largest visiting the North for any event since 2010, when inter-Korean relations chilled following Seoul's sanctions on Pyongyang after an attack on the South Korean warship, the Cheonan, that killed 46 South Korean sailors.
We aim to have these games help set a tone for improving inter-Korean ties, and we will proactively step up efforts toward peace and reunification.
Seoul's Unification Ministry approved the games on Tuesday, with an official saying the matches are meant purely for sporting exchanges. The official added that the ministry has seen proactive cases of inter-Korean exchanges since August, following high-level talks between Seoul and Pyongyang. Examples include such areas as agricultural support and forest development, as well as a recent inter-Korean Catholic Mass in Pyongyang. Meanwhile, due to concerns of any political analysis arising from the soccer event, both labor groups are restricting media coverage. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Despite an angry reaction from Beijing, Washington says it will continue carrying out naval operations in the South China Sea. Son Jung-in fills us in on this geopolitical game of chicken between the U.S. and China.
U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter has confirmed that the guided missile destroyer USS Lassen traveled within 12 nautical miles of artificial islands created by China last year in the disputed Spratly Islands chain. Carter testified during a congressional hearing on Tuesday local time that the American destroyer entered the waters without Beijing's permission. He added that the U.S. will continue with the routine activities as it is allowed to do under international law.
We have said, and we are acting on the basis of saying that we will fly, sail, and operate wherever international law permits.
The disputed Spratly Islands have been a source of rising tensions between Washington and Beijing, especially since China transformed reefs in the area into small islands capable of supporting military facilities. The U.S. has repeatedly said it does not recognize Chinese claims to territorial waters around the artificial islands. The U.S. operations infuriated Beijing, prompting China's Vice Foreign Minister Zhang Yesui to summon U.S. Ambassador Max Baucus on Tuesday to protest what he called a serious provocation that threatens China's sovereignty and security interests. Watchers say the spike in tension is not expected to lessen anytime soon, as both countries are confronting the issue head-on. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And that does it for us. We'll have more updates ready for you at 10 p.m. on Primetime News. Thank you for watching.